And it looks like this may be it. Alex is under the weather, and Josh is working.
And speaking of
And
XJet, there he is.
and there's XJet. He's. We hope XJet has a copy of the PEA FRIA document printed out. It's only 109 pages, plus the several pages from the Federal Registry.
Yeah, Bruce, I was trying to remember who I was quoting somebody saying that as soon as you put a remote ID module on your drone, the environmental impacts go away. And I couldn't remember if that was you who had recently said that or if it was somebody else. But...
So, Josh left us 3 articles to look at. I'd like to go through those and then chat a little bit about the PEA FRIA.
So no Josh tonight. It's
no Josh, no
me
Alex.
and
Alex
you and Blunty and Alex. Alex is under the weather.
He is. So normally you'd think, well, a young guy, it must be out partying his brains out. But no, he was off getting a 4th place in the collegiate competition for FPV drone racing. So congratulations to Alex. And Georgia Tech, let me make sure that I have this right. Oh dear, what did Alex? What?
Yeah, he posted some information for us in our Discord server, right?
Georgia Tech won 2nd, won for a 2nd year of a row, and this is the multi-GP collegiate championships that happened this past weekend. And an individual, Lou FPV from Virginia Tech, has become the new collegiate champion. And next week, Mayhem, located in where is it going to be?
Mayhem. That's in Texas, or am I thinking of a different race?
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. It is in Carlington, Texas, and it is next week. And that would be April 14 through 16, so another multi-GP event.
And if I remember
12
right,
hours of racing.
Yeah, Mayhem, they race as a team for 12 hours and see who can do the most laps kind of thing. And didn't Alex also say it was going to be live streamed on the MultiGP YouTube channel?
He did.
That's a very long live stream if you want to catch the whole thing.
Yeah, so like if you're into watching like Le Mans or something like that, maybe this could be for you.
Or start it halfway through and play it back at 2 times speed and catch up right at the end.
There you go. Welcome, Rob. How are you? Hope you're feeling better. And you're
muted.
And then it'll come back and say, thought I was hitting the unmute button, and it looks like it was the leave button. Not that I've ever done that myself.
No,
wrong button.
Nobody would do that.
Wrong button.
Yeah, we've been there. Good evening. All right, so let's see. I'm a little short on sleep. Up at 4 this morning, having a ball. My son, daughter-in-law, and grandson are with us. So that is it is a fantastic event to lose sleep for the benefit of your grandson. So been working under a F-150 in my son's car. So doing some good father-son bonding, working on vehicles as well. So for me, a fantastic week. But that means I've not been studying the news for a lot of news articles. So Josh is working, and he's shared 3 articles with us. The first he sent us, let's see. Okay, so I've got this up on, let's see. So I have to figure out how to share this, right? Share your screen. All right.
It was an exceedingly slow week in FPV.
Did you guys have trouble filling in the news this week with Joshua?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Going live.
I even went back to look at a year ago and see what happened a year ago, and even with that, we ended 10 minutes early.
Oh wow!
There's just nothing to talk about. So
you didn't spend days talking about the FRIA P?
Unfortunately,
so
no.
no. so Dan, please help me. I'm showing I'm sharing a screen.
Yep, I can see your
And
web
now-
browser, and I see
Okay.
how the FAA is killing drone innovation.
Right.
Yep.
Is there anything else I need to do to share this with the folks?
No, you're good. People can tune
That's
into
good.
that
Okay.
stream there.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so this is so one of the things that being a good researcher, I always look at the date first. This is dated 2016. I'm like, Josh, when did you send this to us? So he's, a good sense of humor. So it does, this goes on and on about Disney. And so I'm like, to me, if something is in market research, if something is more than 6 months old these days, it's like, yeah, ancient history. Okay. So it is interesting to note that in 2016, we were saying the things were going to be bad. And that we're going to see more regulations and more restrictions. And Part 107 was pretty new back then. So yeah, couldn't get all thrilled about that one. Next article was a little more interesting to me. FAA enlists White Fox in an effort to protect airports from drones. This is a great U.S. company out on the West Coast. Luke Fox is the CEO. A bunch of really bright folks in this company, military contracts. And so this is a great company in terms of, you want to get into the drone industry? These folks are making it happen. Now they're working on counter UAS and countermeasures as well. So it's detection as well as countermeasures. This article does not go into a lot of detail. It does say that there are 2 programs happening. One's in Atlantic City, Jersey, and the other is in Seattle. So what we're seeing more frequently is that the FAA is doing a lot more monitoring with other agencies, and the FAA, and Rob can attest to this, is doing quite a bit on educating and pushing out their law enforcement assistance program, and so that's very visible. So this is happening. Good company. FAA is working with White Fox. We may not love what White Fox makes or does, but it's a great group of people, brilliant engineers, and they're producing U.S. product for drones. And it's a lot of micro technology, good industry. So if you're a AA mechanical engineer, aeronautical engineer, this is a cool area. Okay. Any thoughts around the room on this?
Not in general. I know there's a bunch of different ways that these companies have been taking down drones in these cases. One way I had seen was like essentially like a fold-out trailer. You put like a wall thing up, and then it basically shoots out microwave bursts. They use like GaN FETs and like use like super high amp and use these little microwave bursts to block to blast the drones out of the air. And they could target precision individual drones in the air versus like avoiding other drones that they want to keep up.
Wow.
But I know there's a bunch of different methods they have for this kind of stuff. So
yeah, it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of physical methods too. If you looking at the research, they've used hawks, they've used net guns, all kinds of things, really with no efficacy, but it's kind of a novelty to see. Excuse me, I'm getting over COVID. Excuse me. But it's interesting to see a lot of the things that they're using. But yeah, like Blunty said though, they have the electromagnetic type, the EMP stuff too. So definitely a lot of options there.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting.
It'd be kind of fun to be one of the people testing it, like get out your FPV drone and fly around and see how well their systems can take it out of the sky. But other than that, yeah.
So the interesting thing about all this tech that's being sold, though, is you can legally buy it, but you can't legally use it. There's only a handful of federal entities that are allowed to actually take aircraft out of the sky. If one of us does it, it's a felony.
Yeah, it's like a jamming rule, right? I think. Or
It's
I don't know if
there's several things.
it's
It's like hijacking.
yeah,
It's the FCC wiretap. There's several regulations that
yeah,
it falls under.
yeah.
Really good point. Really good point. Yeah, this is not a game to play at home. Well, yeah,
No.
Definitely.
yeah.
CB Runner, are you
All right.
saying our drones are not real aircraft? Just kidding.
Well, for instance, that microwave tech is specifically designed to be like they can target range, direction, like distance, like all kinds of different things with the way they can do this microwave tech. It's really crazy to watch. Like the testing I saw put up like 11 drones and they took like 6 of them out and left the other 5 up, and it like didn't even affect the local drones there. So I think you can pretty safely do that stuff around aircraft depending on like where it's positioned and stuff.
Yeah, that's impressive. Yeah, because I know a lot of the RF counter stuff was oh great, you've just taken down every drone in the
Yes.
area.
Yeah, well, and
Generally,
it's
the
also
coordinates
things like
you can blast the microwave bots. Yeah, only if
you
you're
know,
a
it's also
federal agent, X-Gen.
there's also a difference between like blasting it out of the sky by stopping the RF to it so that it has to land, and then literally knocking it out of the sky because you're messing with the electronics and it can't fly anymore.
Right, right. Yeah, and what's the hazard as it falls out of the sky?
Right.
All right. Okay. So on a brighter note, our last article is we've had the privilege of working with a number of Google Wing people. We've worked with Tony Nannini, one of the program managers and engineers on the Wing program. We've had the privilege of working with James Ryan Burgess, former CEO of Google Wing, and this is an amazing organization. And so Adam Wadsworth, the current CEO of Google Wing, testified to Congress, and as frequently happens, and we also saw Kathy Cahill, another luminary in the industry. Kathy is a professor at University of Alaska Fairbanks and PhD, I believe, in chemistry of all things, and a wonderful woman. And they both took questions that were pedestrian, shall we say. It's the nicest way I can come up with it. And they came back with answers and comments and testimony that was absolutely on point. The commentary toward the FAA this year, much more so than in 2016 and 2017, prior to the 2018 FAA reauthorization, is scathing. And so there are recommendations for reorganizing the FAA, make it more effective, and underscoring that it is not effective. So Google Wing has they've been working on a type certification for their delivery aircraft for 4 years. And as Adam Woodsworth said, they're into it, but they're not done. So there's still a lot of work. And so this is what's happening. This is the same lament that Amazon Prime had as they were laying a lot of their folks off. That their biggest problem was that their type certification process is taking years for a UAS aircraft in the delivery space.
Yeah,
so
by comparison,
Go
our
ahead.
request to update the registration requirements to 1 kilogram instead of 250 grams is like a super easy, tiny thing for them to do compared to the requests everyone else is asking of the Reauthorization Act.
Yeah, well said.
I also was really liked how the guy from Google Wing started off talking about how he got into aviation by being a model aircraft pilot. He takes his, I think, daughters out flying on the weekends all the time and really played up the whole like recreational aspect of it before he got into the commercial side of Google Wing. So I think more and more people need to say things like that and make sure Congress, make sure the FAA employees hear that over and over and over again.
Yeah, virtually everyone we talk to in the aviation industry, manned or unmanned, started in model airplanes, started with drones, started with aircraft as a kid. You're going to say, Plenty, I'm sorry, I stepped on you?
No, you're fine. I would also mention that, when you're talking about the type certification thing, you might think like, well, I don't really care about a corporation getting type certification for a big drone because they're going to do delivery and they're taking over our skies anyway, and this is why we have remote ID and all those kind of things. But I tend to lean on the side of, to me, I think I want the process and everything to fail by its own merits. I don't want it to fail based on overregulation, BS permitting, driving through different people, through different government agencies, trying to figure out how to get through a mess to get a drone in the air. I think it should fail based on the viability of the technology, the demand from customers, the other impacts, like things like that.
Not just because the FAA can't do their job.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. And type cert is relevant to us, and type cert effectively is the manufacturing process has to be completely auditable, and it has to pass a variety. The aircraft has to pass a variety of unknown tests, and it takes years. And so there is significant validity to us because, and those of us who are flying Part 107 or may have interest in flying beyond visual line of sight. Through beyond visual line of sight per the ARC, and so this is the Beyond Visual Line of Sight Aviation Rule Committee. The recommendations that we made suggested that there needs to be a higher level of training to fly long distance beyond visual line of sight, and everyone was agreeing that yes, it's going to require a type cert aircraft. And to me that makes sense. If it's 150 pounds, 200 pounds, and it's flying 100 miles away, yep, makes sense. And I'm with Blunty completely. Needs to be a much more transparent process, easier to happen. So these testimonies are going on. This hour we've sent in the two areas of commentary. One was change the weight limit, both on registration as well as manufacturing requirements from 250 grams. Change the lower limit or the lower bound from 250 grams to 1 kilogram. And the second was about we really would like a reasonable FRIA process.
Speaking of reasonable FRIA process, do we want to talk about the FRIA, or did you have something else first?
Nope. Go ahead.
I got one more news article real quick if we want to toss it out there. Just because I think we haven't mentioned it, and it might be a decent amount of news there. It's in the general chat of the Discord there, Dave, if you want to grab it.
That's assuming I can technically do that.
You got it. You got it. Well, now we lost your browser window.
It's okay.
Right. Oh, that was on the wrong. That was pointing to the wrong screen. So if I bring this one up, the chances of it getting back to the right screen were low. Let me try it again. Share your screen.
It's quite the rendering photo they've got in that thumbnail there for the article. Looks very impressive.
Right. It's a fleet.
Okay. Have I got the correct article here? Chicago to debut first commercial electric air taxi, right?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, so this is Archer Aviation. This is the AAM that we were talking about a little bit, where some of the stuff has been pushed, right? I mean, that's kind of part of the goal, I would suggest, of the type certification stuff is going to be for AAM too. And Archer Aviation is announcing with United Airlines that they're going to do the first air taxi route. At least they've announced the first air taxi route in the U.S., and I think it's the first one by an AAM company. So,
yep.
They're going to do O'Hare to the vertiport Chicago so they can get people out of O'Hare Airport quite a bit faster.
So the title says this is coming soon. Well, how soon is soon?
2025 is the goal.
Of having flights use it by 2025?
Yes.
I guess
that'll be interesting to see.
When you look at that price point, $150, that's within, if you rent a car for 2 days in Illinois, they're easily in that magnitude. And having had the pleasure of rushing to the airport from downtown Chicago out to O'Hare, it can be a challenge. And of course, there is the L, there's public transportation, which is pretty good, gets you right out to O'Hare. But this, to me, is a very well chosen first market to try to go after. The volume of traffic is very high, and that price point, that will attract a lot of business people. Like, yeah, get me to the airport.
I was going
$100
to say
for 10
business people.
minutes. That's a little bit more expensive than a ride at Disneyland.
Yeah, but it saves you, I think, what, an hour? Maybe if you're going to the same place, I think by car, it's probably 45 minutes to an hour, I think, is what the article is saying. So
There's also what's really critical in O'Hare and Chicago is are you going to get there? And so the drive is so highly variable, like so many other cities in the U.S. depending on traffic. So it can take it's an hour drive. That's fine. Oh, it took me 3 hours the other day. Yeah, and that happens every other week. It's pretty common. You get one accident on one side, and you're done. So yeah, missing a flight is it can be very expensive from a business perspective. Okay. Stop streaming. Got it.
It's
Okay,
interestingly-
so the last topic I had was this. We started to talk about it as we were signing on, and that is the programmatic environmental assessment for the FAA recognized identification area. I got it. FPVFREA. And so this is the FAA's attempt to give us a hand and help us out. And I'm not so sure. It's a brisk 109 pages. It is as dense as any of the remote ID documentation or rules, and its lack of clarity and ease of understanding. So if anyone has any insight into this, we would welcome it.
What is the elevator pitch of what this
document
is?
We know that it is any federal agency is required to come up with something like this. This being an environmental assessment, to come out with a programmatic approach is a piece of work that the FAA did not have to do. They could simply have said, you need an environmental statement, environmental impact statement, and just left it up to the CBOs. So by saying that there are a large number of categories that are out of bounds and not an issue, and the FAA has declared that, that's a real plus. There are also numerous categories and topics where federal agencies need to get involved in a FREA application. And yours truly would suggest that requires quite a bit of additional time.
So does this help explain
And
why?
I think I've frozen.
Can you
You're
hear
okay.
us, Dave? We can see and hear you fine. But I don't think he can hear us anymore. Well, hopefully he will, disconnect and reconnect and get back in here quickly.
I was going to mention it's kind of risky having him run the show. Disconnection.
Yeah, it is.
We're doing good though.
We can't, we got to have at least one technical difficulty with Dave's computer every meeting, or it wouldn't be a FPV Freedom Coalition meeting. Dave, can you hear us now? Well, while Dave's trying to reconnect, I was just going to say that I assume that this FREA P thing is part of the reason why we haven't seen the FAA make any progress that we know of on approving FREAs, because they've just announced this document. It's got a 30-day window for comments before it can go into effect, and then it affects what they do as far as approving FREAs, right, Blunty?
Yeah, it seems, I think the real question here will be how this is totally applied. I think when you read through this, I mean, you could consider, I don't know, the way it's written. Here's what I'll say. I don't know enough, and I was talking to Dave about this before. I don't know enough about how the FAA conducts environmental impact studies in other situations to do things like plant new airfields down and things like that. Because to me, this reads a lot like something that you would think of if you're doing an airport, right? They talk about like, air pollution and noise, and there's a set of things that can happen at all these locations that they're worried about. My concern here would be if there's some kind of onus on them to like actually be, am I going to have to present information about what endangered species are on my FRIA land? Am I going to have to submit an air emissions study about what is currently in the FRIA? Or I'm going to have to mark the FRIA as no gas planes, right? Like, I think there's like questions like that. And I don't necessarily know that I have an answer right now. We've been looking through this, trying to figure that stuff out. And I know Dave's been talking with Loretta Alcalay a little bit, and we're kind of trying to do our due diligence here, trying to figure out exactly how this will be applied and how deep they'll be diving. Or is this a bunch of stuff they're putting on paper, and the vetting won't be as deep as we're expecting?
Yeah, no idea. They could use it either way. I would be really surprised, but you could have an AMA field that suddenly can't be a FRIA because it doesn't meet some of these environmental requirements, or the FAA will just say, oh, these have been AMA flying sites for decades. Obviously, the noise isn't an issue, and we're going to just rubber stamp it and approve it.
When I think about it, like cannabis regulations, odor never mattered. Like we had odor regulations for cannabis where we were required to have offsets. They were required to come out and measure like amounts of odor at the road and stuff, and none of that ever happened. So, I'll be interested to know if like I believe the way it's written in Denver, you had to have some kind of odor impact understanding when you put a building up, but nobody ever cared about that or actually did anything with it. So I'll be, like I said, I'll be curious to see how it's actually applied and what because this isn't an airport. It's literally a flying field for fixed wing or FPV,
right.
Multi-rotors, things like that.
Maybe we'll start seeing this if we start to get emails from the FAA on our FRIA applications and they start asking us questions about it. Or maybe it's one of those things they don't do a whole lot with until there's a complaint after the fact, and they'll bring up, oh, well, you had to meet these requirements that we never asked you about, and get you shut down.
Forgive my ignorance because Alex isn't here, but do we know when you submit a free application, are you listing the person who's applying for the FRIA on any of the contact for the FAA?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm curious. The wording in here talks about the FRIA applicant. So I'm curious if they're going to be communicating with the CBOs and attempting to do a middleman deal, or if they're going to be contacting the applicant, the listing contact information in the FRIA for this information, right?
Yeah, I would guess they're going to the FRIA applicant themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are. Dan, can you hear me?
Yep, okay. We can hear you.
Excellent. Yep. I'm loving the Discord video service.
Yeah, so Dave, we were generally saying like, we've been talking to different people. We've been trying to do an assessment of how bad this is, what effect this will actually have, how much this will stall FRIAs, and how much they'll actually be doing to vet each FRIA, and like what information they'll actually be collecting. Like, will everybody need to submit an air quality study for their area? I need to have I need to put drones on the field and then stand at the edges and measure the decibels with a meter, right? Like, we don't know how deep this will go. And so I think there's a range of possibilities of how this will come out. And I think the problem is we have less than 30 days to comment on this. And we don't know necessarily what comments need to be made based on how this will be applied. I think that's something we're trying to suss out, right?
Exactly. Very well said. Yeah, we've gotten to people that have explained to us that they're after the 30-day comment period, there will be a 60-day period where lawsuits may be placed against the FAA if there is a view that a lawsuit is appropriate. Subsequent to that, this can start to go into effect, it sounds like. So 90 days, shortest period of time, because this is not a new rule. This is not an NPRM, not a notice for public rulemaking. This is and a document that points to a number of existing rules, and it's a programmatic assessment. So this is theoretically at our benefit, but as Blunty so rightly said, this could be a death knell for FRIAs.
So if we do math here, the 90 days means that would mean, in theory, they would need to wait 90 days to be doing these assessments, and then once it's accepted, you'd be doing assessments. They gave us a 4-month window for FRIAs. 3 months from now is July. If they can not start doing these assessments until July, and we're expected to have FRIAs by September, the math doesn't really work out, does it?
And isn't it interesting that we've been trying to get 7 questions answered since February, and last night we got answers, and one of which was we've already started reviewing applications. Notice the phrase was reviewing, not approving, because it sounds like one of the requirements is now going to be this FRIA PEA.
Yeah. So real quick, Dave, a great question by XGen in the chat, and something we've discussed a while ago we haven't talked about recently. Do we really believe that stage 2 of remote ID will come in September? Do we think there'll be a delay?
Yeah.
And
we think it will
from
come.
what we've heard, from what we've heard, there's no expected delay at all. We expect it to come into effect.
Yep. As Admiral Farragut would say, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead."
Yeah, I don't think the FAA is worried about FRIAs not being available when remote ID comes into effect. You know.
Agreed. Yeah, and if you look at the numbers, we have been very vocal that the FAA's estimate of 4,000, which is cited repeatedly in this document, is woefully inadequate. And so their view of, if they're only 4,000 is, it's really not that big a deal. It's, and in this document, they even cite their own numbers of 1.5 million UAS operators. So the numbers do not add up. It doesn't, if you're thinking, okay, well, if FRIA is a viable alternative for remote ID, do the numbers, it does not work. And it does in this document, they are trying to get AMA fields approved, and that's about it.
Yeah, XJet says, so that'll ground all the AMA members who are relying on FRIA status if they don't have FRIA status by September. And I think that will probably be the case. I think the AMA is going to push as hard as they can to get these done. But I mean, if there needs to be an assessment for each of these fields, and they have to work with each of these individual people, and based on the timelines we've heard and how long this is going to take to come into effect, I mean, I don't see this happening, and I don't see a delay from what we've heard. I mean, who knows? That could change.
Yeah.
And the AMA is going to be pushing real hard. You better believe the AMA is going to be pushing real hard for that to, be done as fast as possible.
I think the AMA's, a prudent person's approach would be, we've done everything humanly possible to comply. We're going to continue our safe activities at our fields. And that's what I would, and I'm not suggesting that this is what they are going to say, but to me that would be a prudent response from the AMA. And again, let's think of the numbers: 100,000 AMA members, 1.5 million small UAS operators in the United States. So while the AMA is an important organization, it's a small percentage of the total, and that's a fact that as you look through this PEA FRIA document again and again and again, they conflate AMA with all recreational small UAS, and it is absolutely not the case.
So back on the topic of us asking the FAA some questions that they finally got around to answering, I was really frustrated by the answer to the first question, which just made it difficult to read the rest of the email. But we had asked them for an API, an application programming interface for the FRIA application, so that we could take data out of our database and create FRIA requests without a human having to go through a web browser and load the web page and fill out all the forms, right? So that it would be nice and automated, and we could make it not waste a whole bunch of people's time. And their response was, well, we can't give you access to an API. Well, first they said there was no such thing as an API, and then I pointed out that you can look at their source on their webpage, and it has the API parts of it right in there. But then they said, well, we can't give you access to the API for privacy and security reasons, which, if anybody knows anything about programming and using an API,
yeah, that's totally
that's
BS.
absolutely untrue and just total BS, like Blunty said. And
literally part of the point is like, part of the point is that you can generate keys for people, and you're accessing the API through an interface. And I mean, it's like, it's ridiculous.
I think the person writing the answer had no idea what the question was and was just told to write something. And
I was gonna say,
say no.
Right.
Just say no.
Yes. Find a way to say no. Yes, exactly.
So if we really do want to submit free applications, I may just have to continue with my reverse engineering efforts and prove them wrong anyway. But
yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah. DFW FPV has asked, did y'all catch the QA from Sun and the Fun? Wasn't too much there. I assume the QA is question and answer and not quality assurance.
Yeah,
but in either case,
he posted some
videos. I did not.
He posted a quick video, at least the one I saw, of Kevin Morse speaking, and then he asked him a few questions, and Kevin politically answered with no answer to everything he asked. Pretty much, if I got that right.
Okay.
DFW, FPV, Brian, is that a good summary? Yeah. It was typical Kevin answering questions.
Yeah. So we have an opportunity tomorrow to talk to the FAA, and we'll bring up these questions again. Notably, the one that just Dan mentioned it, and that one just. There were a couple that really galled me, but that was one that was like, wow, they went there. They just said it. Yeah, this is it's getting hard. They also they said that they never said that it was going to take them 4 months to process a free application, and that, of course, is what they said. We had multiple folks on the call. And so that's unfortunate when we now get into a denial of ever saying something. That's is not a good state of the relationship. And we continue to pursue the safety guidelines for the FPVFC, as I think we mentioned, and we've posted those, right, Dan?
Yeah.
We've been transparent about what the FAA came back and said that we needed to enhance our night operations, and we needed to add a section on FPV racing, which of course we already had. So we worked to increase those, and then the FAA's comeback was, well, while we were looking at the rest of your safety guidelines, we've got some additional changes. So we're absolutely at a case where the FAA is adding regulations via an advisory circular. That's the point we've been on, and we're digging in a bit on that point.
And they basically told us that if we don't do what they ask, we will probably not continue we won't continue to be able to work with them, or whatever words they chose. But basically, you're not a CBO anymore if you can't make our demands to change your safety guidelines. Right. And so I tried to create a whole story about this and stuck it in that blog post we've got on our website with some background and exactly what the emails said that they asked us to change.
Right. So this is in an effort for transparency, and thank you, Dan. This is a lot of extra headache to document this in this much excruciating detail. But if you're wondering, well, what are the guys at FPVFC doing when they're talking to the FAA? It's this level of back and forth. That's unfortunately the norm, and that's what's going on. Yeah. XJet's point: lying to those you're trying to influence and regulate is not the way to gather their respect. or trust. Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Yeah, the FAA is not doing anything to help their reputation in any of what they've done lately. That's for sure. They're going the wrong direction, at least with our community. And if you listen to that congressional thing too, it's like it's not just us. It's Google Wing. It's people in Alaska. It's everybody is just very harsh on the FAA right now.
Yeah.
Just so
I don't. Go ahead, Bunty.
I just want to say, just to be ultimately clear about the safety guidelines thing before we get to cap that off, I think where we're at is just generally saying like, we'll accept a few of these changes. A few of them seemed reasonable enough that we were okay with changing them. A large portion of them we're not okay with, and we stated as much. We explained why we're not okay with them, and we're going to be going back and submitting another round to them again with those small amount of changes, and most of the rejections not included, and then we'll basically play it out and see how it goes. But I think at this point, we're not interested in making overarching rules through our safety guidelines because they're not interested in going through the proper rulemaking process. And I think we should be clear about that. Like we're not interested in quoting the AC as rule so that they can forcibly add regulations to our members who want to fly under our guidelines. And we're going to do the best we can to fight against that.
Yeah, some of the other things we're trying to say no to are anti-collision lights and orientation lights, having large setbacks for, say, tiny whip races, things that just don't
they're
make
just
sense.
burdens.
Nets are a good suggestion.
Yeah, they're
right for a tiny whip race.
They're essentially opinion, right? And unfortunately, like for them, like we are not interested in taking their opinion as fact in a rule document because we're essentially making rules through CBO regulations, like CBO guidelines. So we're trying to use facts and what's required through the rules and as little regulation as possible that we're introducing through our documents. So
right,
that's the point.
Yeah, and if it's written in 44809, which is statute, which is the law, that we respect, and that is absolutely reflected in our safety guidelines explicitly, and will continue to be. 50 grand tiny moves.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And Bruce even put out a video this week showing how dangerous flying tiny whoops into piles of logs are. So it's clearly, something we don't want people doing in their own front yard.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. What else do we got this week? When's the next AAAC meeting coming up, Dave?
April 26th.
Okay, and this one was, we were expecting it to be earlier this year, but they held off on it and now sort of surprised us.
March 20, and then they dropped it in. Yep.
And the AAC is?
The Advanced Aviation Advisory Committee, formerly the Drone Advisory Committee. It is the FAA's FACA, or Federal Advisory Committee.
For which we are still not official members, despite applying over and over again. Is that right?
Right. And being more active and more of an active participants than many of the members of the ACC.
Well, why give us any recognition if we do all the work for free?
That's it. without an ability to vote.
XJet asks, how many recreational members are on the ACC?
Now the zero.
Zero.
There was the AMA was on the ACC, and then they were when DJI and several other organizations were asked to stop. Their membership ended. Not renewed would be probably the most political way to say it. The AMA's membership ceased, and that was like 2020.
Well, they had to make room for all these AMA companies, these
urban
air mobility companies to join.
Yeah, they added 7 seats, and for the AAAM, Advanced Air Mobility, and none of them went to recreational. So we've made it very clear that the largest cohort by far, by an order of magnitude, is recreational, and there is no representation on the AC.
Yep.
So, yeah. So that's the reason why we've asked folks to send letters to Congress, because that's going to the organization that has the budget as well as the mandates for the FAA, and that's what the whole raise the limit campaign is all about. That's what the memo that we've sent to the House Subcommittee on Aviation and the Senate Subcommittee on Aviation. They're both this pass. It is a bicameral and bipartisan piece of legislation, so we anticipate 2 bills that will then have to be reconciled in conference.
Do we expect to get any response from our submission of that? Have we gotten any email just saying, yeah, we received it?
We don't.
No?
None. Nothing. And if we do get a response, great, but we do not expect any response. They're getting to know us, though. I think we're gaining a reputation. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing will remains to be seen. Let's see. So the meeting with the tomorrow with the FAA is it's our understanding, a recurring CBO and FAA meeting. It is hosted by the outreach organization, so effectively what is akin to a communications or a PR organization within the FAA, and all 4 CBOs, AMA, the STEM plus C, Flight Test Community Association, and FPV Freedom Coalition are all invited. And right. I'm seeing a couple of notes here, and thanks to everyone who has sent in notes. And a word on that. Dan and Blunty and Alex put together a great video to try to keep that momentum going. Thank you for those who have sent in memos. And we've also had a number of folks whose normally it's a congressional representative staff that have come back to them and said, hey, I got a couple questions. And we're available in any way that you like, whether it's to be on the phone with you, or to answer specific questions, or to add further depth in terms of what it is on a specific area. Happy to help in whatever way. Drones are not a real, hence most won't care. Yeah, yeah. It's not that. We anticipate that. In the last, so one of the comments here, drones are not a re-election issue, hence most won't care. The last reauthorization bill in the Senate passed 100-0. And there were elements in it that we strongly disagreed with, but went through, of course. Anyway, so we'll see if the 118th Congress can vote on this in a very strong way, or will they make a case out of it? We'll see. Washington is a crazy place right now.
It really seems like if some of the staffers who are writing this get something into it, then it has a good chance of sticking around and getting approved, or at least
agreed.
People talking about it.
Agreed. And as we've said, the staffers that we've spoken to are super articulate. They know the aviation regulation, and they were empathetic to listening and talking to us about model aviation. So, that's obviously the backbone of our congressional structure is smart staffers.
Well, let's hope they get it in there.
Okay. Yes. So, anything else from around the room, or for those listening? Any questions, comments?
Covered everything I was thinking about that we wanted to cover this week.
Great.
Rob, got any good stories for us to tell? Oh, he's on mute.
You're on mute again. You're on mute again.
Oh, and he didn't even hang up this
There he
time.
is.
The wrong one. I'm learning Discord as I go here. So the only real exciting thing we have on our side this week, the Florida Senate Committee hearing. I don't know if any of y'all followed that or listened to that. Essentially, Florida outlawed all drones manufactured in China, which was a big hit to their public safety entities, their fire, their police, their EMS, their natural disasters, hurricane response, universities, you name it. So anyways, I'll put the link in the chat. It's a rather lengthy thing, but if you go to around 45 minutes, 45 to 55 minutes is a pretty good run. But they absolutely ripped apart the DMS secretary. So it was actually
I saw that clip. That was absolutely scathing. Or not. Of that DMS individual. That was unbelievable.
I actually after watching that, I was very optimistic, and it kind of gives me encouragement even with our initiative here, with the raising the limit and with the FRIA stuff and with all the things that we're pushing, because here a group of people banded together and they stood up and they worked together, and now the Senate's saying, hey, we're going to fix this. So it's very encouraging.
So is this Florida State Senate or is this federal?
It's going to be state.
Okay.
Yeah, this is all state level.
All right. So right now, is it that Florida passed legislation that public safety cannot use or cannot procure any new?
Cannot use, period. So essentially, it's essentially all the things that they owned and were legally using.
They grounded.
So about 60% of the public safety agencies there said, come and take it, and wave the flag with the drone on it, proverbially speaking, and continued operations, and the others were compliant. So it's been a big problem for the universities and the public safety entities in Florida.
Absolutely.
I just want to mention, I think that it isn't just China. It's like they have to use blue SUAS, right? Which is like
correct.
I think quite a larger burden.
You couldn't even
than just saying like.
Well, it can't. I think the radio, the video, the flight controller, any of that can't be from components from China. The Texas legislation that they just proposed is actually saying Syria, Russia, or China, and we're hoping that doesn't pass. But it's on the books right now.
Yeah. I think you can file a form to make a built drone blue SUAS by having all parts from U.S. retailers, like not U.S. retailers, but U.S. manufacturer. Which is
then you have to go through.
I think it's almost impossible at this point. Yeah.
An approval process.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not you can't get just say, okay, I've done it. I've assembled this this drone. I've done it myself. I declare that I'm blue. It's no. This is a DoD program.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow, that would be terrible for search and rescue teams and all kinds of stuff.
I'm sure it's a nightmare for most of these guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just same thing. California's following suit. There's two major manufacturers that have hired lobbyists that are U.S. manufacturers of blue products, and there is proposed laws in most of the states right now trying to outlaw, because that's the thing. If you can legislate your way into the market, then you're going to have the market.
Yeah.
It's as if it's a security thing. Do they really think the Chinese-made motors are spying on the USA?
That's what I said. What about these? Yeah. What about our cell phones and iPhones and laptops and vehicle computers?
That's what that balloon was flying over the United States. It was listening to the sounds from the motors to transmit that back to China.
Yeah. It's a freak. Yeah. They're encoding signals in the motors. Yeah.
I wonder if it was broadcasting remote ID.
Yeah. So.
All right. Good discussion. So, sort of a crazy week. We've got a couple of things cooking with the FAA, and we'll keep at it. And other than that, any other questions from guys, from Rob, Lunty, Dan, or anyone listening in?
No.
Great. Remote ID will fix everything. Yeah. Yeah. Remote. Yeah. Climate change.
Well, we could answer real quick. Dan responded in chat, but somebody was asking about where's BVLOS at, or specifically where's Shielded Operations at. Yeah. And then I think they're just wondering where it's at in process and what we think will happen with Shielded Operations moving forward, and do we have a chance to get Shielded Operations, those kind of things.
Who was it that told? Oh, so Dan and I heard a very different story from two of the CVO guys.
Yep, during a meeting with the FAA.
They said, we're working on activity of shielded ops. Now, what they were working on, we're pretty sure had to do with Part 107, which is the only thing it could really be that they're working on. However, in the discussions that we've had with the congressional staffers, their reaction was, "Oh, yeah, that's not going to happen," and that their opinion corresponds with the view that we have had coming out of the Beyond Visual Line of Sight Aviation Rulemaking Committee. AOPA, ALPA, HAI got together and went to Congress as a block, and one of the things that they were very negative on was shielded operations, which is terribly unfortunate because we met with representatives from those organizations and had good agreement on flight requirements under 400 feet. And the Helicopter Association International folks do have a lot of operations under 400 feet. And what we were asking is if they fly under 400 feet, that they squawk ADSB. And we further wanted them to have, if they chose to not squawk ADSB, then we wanted that aircraft to have the responsibility to yield right away. And their response to that was, no way, never, not going to happen. And so they took that very, very seriously. So that was unfortunate because that was a recommendation coming out of the ARC. So where is that? Now, interestingly, we have heard yet another contradictory comment coming out of FAA Integration Office that there are a number of work items having to do with beyond visual line of sight. So, or I'm sorry, with shielded operations. So we don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. It makes a ton of common sense. And this is the reason we chose the raising the lower bound from 250 grams up to 1 kilogram. We felt it was doable, and we thought it would have dramatic positive effect to remote ID.
Yeah, so on shielded ops, don't get your hopes up. It's not happening anytime soon. But if you want to put some positive spin on it, the FAA is talking about it. More and more FAA employees have at least heard of it and know what it is. So it seems like it's making some progress. I'm sure it's really slow, and I'm not sure which direction the progress is in, but it's making some progress.
Yeah, it's being socialized. Very good point. Yeah, and we were able to make it an absolute recurring point in the BVLOS ARC document, and that's so that it's being talked again and again and again, and that is absolutely a positive. Any other questions came popping up? All right. Apologies for the crazy video on my end once again.
It wouldn't be a meeting without it. So
that's it. I keep up my record. All right. Thank you. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Thank you very much.